There are issues that need to be discussed, like the growing, in my view, anti-white hatred among black people. We need to talk about that. We need to talk about crime figures, about gang culture in London. We need to talk about all of that, and we have to not be ashamed or embarrassed to acknowledge racial statistics in crime. I will not apologise for saying that.
They're very complicated, though, because they mix up with poverty and with being a new immigrant or those kinds of things. They're so complicated. And as to, I agree, you cannot have a country where some groups of people are allowed to be very proud of their ethnicity and race, and they're encouraged to do so by our television channels.
Yes.
They are made to go,
Absolutely.
This is our awareness for our ethnicity, and the idea is because we are some sort of minority, and then tell the white population, or in Japan, the Japanese population, that they can't be proud, because that's a recipe for disaster. So I 100% agree with you on that. My answer is always, everybody, stop it. Stop it. I had this debate with David Baddiel when he came on, and he was saying about, he wrote that book, Jews Don't Count, and it was about the hierarchy of oppression in the woke culture, and why aren't the Jews in there? And I said, no, don't get rid of the oppression thing, and all of us can start looking at each other, like Martin Luther King Jr. said. I don't know who Senior was, probably his dad, right?
I'm assuming so. I'm no expert.
Like him, and maybe his dad said, people... Like you said at the beginning, blank slate.
Sure, but demographic and blank slate between two individuals are different.
Yeah.
Demography is not the same as two individuals meeting and treating each other with respect. We have to deal with, I think this is actually, let me phrase it this way. Demographics are a real thing, and we cannot shy away from talking about them.
Yes, but they do combine with lots of things. I mean, because otherwise you would have to say, and I'm not, I don't know enough about all of this, but you would have to say there is something about it. Let's say crime statistics are higher among black communities in the UK than the white. Well, unless we're going to say, yes, but that's because of other things. If we're going to say it's because of, then what are we saying? Is it something about the pigmentation? Is it something about the skin color? What is it?
I have no idea, but we ought to talk about it and maybe find out.
That's why I would say this is culture.
We don't talk about it at all.
It's culture.
Culture, yes. But is that culture... How does that culture negatively impact on the white majority? And are we going to just look aside and continue to let it negatively impact the white majority? Africa and Europe are very different places. And why don't we talk about why? I have no idea why. I'm not pretending to know why. But why don't we talk about it? And why don't we talk about, let's ask the question, if Britain were to become black majority, for instance, not to pick on black people, but what would it look like? Black. But what else would it look like?
I think it depends on how that were to happen. If that was to start to happen, I think it would be a question of, as I keep maybe naively saying, culture, right? Frank Bruno, Ian Wright.
These are individuals, though. There is. Again, it's the difference between demographic and individual. I understand that demographics are made up of individuals, but large numbers of individuals is different from dealing one individual to another. There are issues here, and they need to be talked about. I have no idea why Europe is the way it is versus Africa is the way it is, for instance, but it is very different, and we should ask why before we open our borders to people from such a different place. Why shouldn't we be asking what impact will this have on us? Why is Africa so poor versus Europe, which is so well off? Why? There's got to be a reason for that.
Developed at different times, different land, different problems with the climate.
Right, and the people who come from there are of that land or of that culture.
But they're blank slates.
You can't just expect, no. You can't just expect to move millions of people from a culture. Like, I understand that Africa is a big continent with many countries in it, but if we look at it from a demographic, from miles up there, you can't expect to bring millions of people from a continent like Africa, throw them into a continent like Europe, and expect everyone to just, it's fine, this is fine.
How do you feel about?
Fine, we're very different.
How do you feel about a black guy's been adopted as a baby and raised by a white family here?
Of course, look, again, you're talking about an individual. I'm talking about demographics. It's the same with Asia, by the way. You can't pick millions of people out of Pakistan, throw them into the UK and expect there to be no division, no problem, no clash. We are different. We are all humans. We all have a common humanity. But one of the characteristics of humanity is difference. We are not all the very same. We are not. If we were, the world would look the same. From Australia to Canada and everywhere in between would look exactly the same. If we were the same, we're not.
But do you mean immutably, or do you mean?
I don't know where it comes from. I don't know if we evolve, don't we? We've evolved differently. I'm not even necessarily saying it's biology. I have no idea. I just know that we are different.
See, my feeling is, from the little I know, that there are differences, immutable differences. There are genetic differences, there are IQ differences, but they're very, very...
I didn't say that, you did.
yeah. I'm going to be more controversial.
You're even naughtier than me. It's true. Yeah. I was holding back a little bit, but that's true.
There are these things.
So you're even naughtier than me.
Yeah. Well, no, I've done an episode on that.
Yeah.
And the reason I keep pushing it is because Ashkenazi Jews are shown time and time again to be the highest on IQ tests. Some people would say they debunk this. Some people don't. It's very, very... It's as controversial as it can get, isn't it? That's why you didn't even want to say it.
Right.
It is.
It's true. I left it out. We're different. But you added in the bits I left out. I'm glad you did, but it's true.
But however, I would say there are then pockets in different parts of, it's so difficult to measure this up and to weigh it up. It's really hard. And I just think, okay, all of those things are tiny differences. And without saying diversity is our strength, there can be some use from having people from different parts of whatever,
Of course, but they should adapt. And
yes, well, this is where we agree.
And that will only happen in small numbers. That way you must keep minorities in European countries. Non-Europeans should be a small minority. Therefore, you can learn from each other. But the people who come into Europe from outside must accept a European majority, supermajority, not 51%, and must adapt to that culture. Must not insult the native people of that country or their culture, or attack it, or commit crimes, grotesque crimes against them, or bring their cultural crimes. They may not be crimes in your source country, but they're crimes here. So you don't get to do it. If you want to do it, go back to your own country. For example, FGM, which is one of the most grotesque things imaginable. You don't get to do that here. You can do that in Somalia. I wish you wouldn't do it in Somalia, but I can't police the world. You don't get to do that here. If you want to come here and cut up your daughter's genitals, get the hell out. We are not accepting this. And it's not just that. Halal is another example. Forced marriage, child marriage, Sharia courts, out. Yeah. No, you don't get to come to Britain and bring that with you. No.
This is why I mentioned that you'd lived abroad, because it's that feeling of you go to somebody's country, you learn to respect it. And when I was in Argentina, I told you off air before that on Falklands Day, which they would call Malvinas or Dia de las Malvinas or something like that, I accidentally wore a full England kit and was walking around before I realised it was Falklands Day. And then I had to take my shirt off and run home before anybody noticed. But really, partly out of fear for my life, but also of offending the local people. This is their country. I would do things the way they do it. And it's very frustrating for a lot of people who have lived abroad, and I'm sure many viewers have had this experience, or just holidays, just being abroad and respecting the local people. And they do their bit to do that, and then coming back to the UK and finding people won't do that for our culture. Right. And not only that, they're encouraged not to by our TV channels.
Right, and our government.